What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. And this is another installment in my Loose Thoughts series where I pick a more free-form topic of discussion. And in this video, I want to talk about how I personally approach games that I don't finish. I've been thinking about this a lot, and I came across what I feel like is a pretty powerful reframing of this whole idea of not finishing games and having a DNF pile or a gaming backlog. And I want to talk about it a bit. So first, let me start out by saying it is perfectly okay to not finish games. It doesn't mean that you wasted your time. It doesn't mean that you wasted your money. It doesn't mean you wasted anything. If you had an experience and you didn't see it through to its completion or rolling credits in the game, that's okay. That's okay to not have finished that game. It's okay to put it down once you feel like you've gotten enough out of it. I had plenty of experiences last year that were really good gaming experiences that I didn't see through to the end, that I didn't roll credits on, but still had a good time, enjoyed, and may come back to the finish or may start over and play again. One that comes to mind, top of mind for me, is this game called Alice Madness Returns. It was this PS3 360 era action adventure hack and slash that was like a dark fantasy retelling of Alice in Wonderland, and it was a phenomenal game. And the only complaint I had with it is that it was too long. So, I think I played the game for about 15, 20 hours. I'm not sure exactly how long it is. I think I was close to the end, but I just didn't finish it. And that was okay. It was still one of my most enjoyable gaming experiences from last year, but I just didn't complete it. The other experience that I'm thinking about when I first got to Switch 2, one of the games I got was Rune Factory Guardians of Ozma. And I really enjoyed that game, that mix of combat and, kind of like a farming sim sort of element. It was one of my first times playing a Rune Factory game, and the gameplay loop was really enjoyable. Again, just too long for me, but I enjoyed my 15, 16 hours that I put into it, and, I enjoyed it, and now I've moved on. And I think we just need to get more comfortable with that idea of being able to have your fun with something, regardless of when the game developers thought that the experience should end. If you've had your fun with it and you're done with it, it's okay to stop it. It's okay to put it to the side. It's not a DNF. It's not a, something you have to have anxiety or stress over. It's just another thing that you played, had an experience with, and now you're on to something else. And I think that's okay. And just getting comfortable with that again is something I think more gamers should just kind of lean into, rather than having all of this backlog anxiety. One thing that I think can help here, I'm actually a really big fan of reframing things, having a mental way of reframing things to help you process and put things in their proper perspective. Sometimes just having an analogy or a comparison can help you really reframe things in your mind in a more productive way that has real world tangible benefits with how you approach things in your everyday life. So I came across this mental reframing of video games, just trying to approach video games in the way that we approached playing with toys as kids. If you played with a bunch of action figures, dolls, or toys as a kid, then you know how this was. You didn't have any anxiety over toys you weren't playing with piling up. You just, as a kid, if you wanted to play with a toy that you thought was fun, you just played with that toy. And then once it was no longer fun, you put it down and you picked it back up when you were ready to play with it again. If you wanted to let Stone Cold Steve Austin wrestle one of the Ninja Turtles, you just did that. And then once you were done, you just put those toys back where they were and you picked them up once you were ready to play with them again. And I think it's a really powerful way to reframe, how we approach games, to not have all of this backlog stress and backlog anxiety. And I came across this example, this kind of comparison from another creator named Bubchi. And they had a video titled "Stop Finishing Games You Should Be Dropping." I'm going to play a clip from Bubchi's video here, and I think the way that they put it was a great way to reframe how we play games and how we should approach playing games to avoid all this anxiety and backlog stress.
But if anything, I am really liking the idea of even just thinking of my games more like the way I thought about and treated toys as a kid, like toys in a toy box, where it's like, pick it up, play with it when you're feeling like it, and then put it back. And maybe you'll come back to a toy often if you really love it. Maybe you'll play with a toy only in certain contexts, like every time your friend's over, you might get a certain toy out, but otherwise no. Maybe you'll put a toy down for a long time, but then you'll reconnect with it a little bit later. I do think I just like the idea of that better, and just that gets more at the idea of pick up something, play it, not pick up something, finish it. It almost feels like sometimes we're supposed to like pick up a game and like squeeze all the juice out of it, like get everything possible out of it before you like put it down, and that's when you're done. And I just don't want to feel like I have to do that. Again, if you enjoy that, great. But I think for some of us, it can feel like another obligation. And when you're an adult, your life is already full of obligations and responsibilities. Like, we don't want to be feeling that way when we're engaging in something that we're doing in our free time, whether that's to relax, to unwind, for entertainment, for fun, or even to be emotionally moved, right? Games don't always have to be fun, but we are always playing them to have an experience that we value. And if you start valuing that experience less because you're not vibing with a game that you're playing, then you shouldn't have to stick with it.
So I love this reframing of games as the way we approach playing games with toys as kids. And, you know, it's so perfect because toys didn't ask anything of you, right? Toys were just there when you were ready for them. Toys didn't need to be completed. We didn't have to squeeze every ounce of enjoyment out of toys the way that we seem to feel like we have to extract all of this value from games. But the layer that I wanted to add on top of this is that if you remember as a kid, you know, maybe you didn't go through this, maybe your parents were rich and they didn't care, but I know for my parents, sometimes I would ask for a toy at the store. And then if you didn't play with that toy enough, your parents would actually get mad at you because they didn't see you playing with the toy enough. You know, my parents would always say I would ask for something in the store and then, you know, I would play with it on the car ride home. And then by the time we're back home, it's on the floor and I'm not playing with it. And they would get upset because they spent $5, $6 at a grocery store for a toy that we begged for. And they don't see us extracting the value out of it. But as a kid, we're not thinking about that. We're like, I want that. I want to play with that. And then once we were done playing with it, we tossed it to the side because we weren't having fun with it anymore. We were just done with it and would come back to it later. What I think happens is, as an adult, right, you start to have these own two ideas conflicting in your mind, right? Now the parent that spent the money, that's you, right? That's your money that you're spending on your hobby, on your video games. You spent $50, $60, $70, $80 on a video game. And if you feel like you're not extracting the value that you thought you would get out of that video game, now that's where that conflict arises, right? So now you're thinking, I need to continue to see this game through to completion because even though I'm not enjoying myself or even though I'm ready to play something else, I need to extract the value out of this game in order to justify the purchase that I made. And I think that that's just not a productive way to enjoy this hobby. You're naturally, if you're a curious gamer, you're naturally going to seek out additional experiences. You're going to want to have different games to play. And that's okay. I think that's a healthy thing for someone who's engaged with the hobby, as a lot of gamers are with this hobby. You know, if you're gaming, you know, anywhere from 10 plus hours per week, you know, that's a core gamer. You're going to have a yearning for new experiences, for new things to try, and to purchase new games. So, you know, where this reaches more of a conflict is when it butts heads with hyper consumerism and trying not to consume too much. And it's not an easy balance. It's not an easy balance to strike. But I think if you offload a bit of that stress off of yourself, treat games more as toys, I think you're also more likely to go back to them. I think part of what makes this so stressful for folks is that they feel like if they move off of a game, they're never coming back to it. And I think that's where you have to treat these things more like toys. As kids, we used to always come back to old toys. You know, at least in my house, I had a big, you know, bin that just had all my toys in it. And I would often come back to toys that I hadn't played with in a long time. And so I think that, you know, if you're more likely to treat these things like toys, you're more likely to come back to them later and have a more healthy relationship with your backlog or your library or collection, whatever you want to call it. You know, I think that that's going to be something that this reframe can help you with. Treat all of your toys like a big bin. You come back to it, you pick something up. Hey, I haven't played with this in a long time. Let's play. Let's have a session. Let's play together. You know, I think that that's going to be something that'll be important. And you know, when I think about this reframe of games as toys, you know, I think that it actually can help with a lot of the root causes for some of the emerging trends that we see around YouTube and around YouTube gaming content. You know, one of the big ones is backlog anxiety. You don't have to go too far to find videos about people talking about how they're approaching their backlog, how they're going to crush their backlog, how they're going to conquer their backlog. If you just treated games like toys, there would be no reason to have anxiety, to have any desire to conquer anything. You wouldn't have this anxiety over not finishing things. And then you just play them for as long as you're having fun, and then you just move on. I think the other trend that this, is related to is this trend of handheld gaming bringing people back to gaming, handheld gaming being a conduit for people finding joy in gaming again. For handhelds, stuff like the Switch or the Steam Deck, Game Boys, 3DSs and stuff like that, they're much easier to treat as toys because you just pick them up and have these kind of quick sessions with them. I think that makes it a lot easier for folks to view those as toys compared to their big $1,000 gaming rig or their, $750 PlayStation 5 Pro that's sitting on the big TV, right? It's harder to see those things as toys, but when it's something like a 3DS with Pokemon on it, now we're talking about something that feels more like a toy, looks more like a toy. And so you naturally kind of approach these things more as toys than when you're just using things on a console or PC. So, so hopefully this helps. It's, like I said, it's just a bit of a mental reframing. I do have some additional videos that I want to do more focused on like tangible things that you can do for approaching your backlog and getting rid of this backlog anxiety. But I think this is really the most powerful thing. Mentally, just approach your games more as toys, more for your own enjoyment. And I think the more that you're able to do that and kind of balance that with the conscious consumerism, I think that will result in a much happier equilibrium of sorts with this hobby. Well, if you made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, all the typical YouTube stuff, and I'll see you in the next one.